Alrighty. There it is. Xenosaga 1 has been conquered. Uh, yeah, I got episode 2 and 3 uh, to worry about. Imagine playing this in 2001 and not even knowing if there was another game that was going to come out, or 2003 or whatever it was. Yeah, that sounds like rough times. If this never got another game, that would have been very rough. At the same time, well, at the same time, I could definitely see how it would not get another game based off of how they decided to focus their attention on certain aspects of the story and things like that. Like I said, there's no resolution to that ending there. Um, that ending to me tells me that this entire game was a like the setting up of the blocks. They wanted to introduce all the characters that they wanted to introduce. They wanted to introduce all the locations that they wanted to introduce. They wanted to introduce all um like various backstory for certain things, and then they're going to rely on the other games to start closing threads. But the only thing that they do in this game, from my perspective, is they pull threads. Um, you think when it first came out, it was established that this was supposed to be this multi-game episodic saga. Well, we've seen how that works out sometimes. You know, you get the first game and it gets, five sales, and like, well, there was a game out there that actually had that problem. Um, Dang it, I feel like I played it recently too. Um, there there were some people in the chat, and they were like, "Yeah, this game was supposed to be two or three games or something like that, but it got canceled and in the middle of development. So they had or the sequel games got canceled in the middle of development, and they just like smushed everything from those games into the first game, and it was rough times. I feel like I played that game not that long ago. I wouldn't say the name if even if it was that, but um, oh, I think I know what it was. I think I know what it was. You missed some story stuff, but you guess you're better off not watching the VODs. Uh, I guess it depends on, because like I said, the entire story for this game is building blocks. Um, there's no conclusions to anything. Um, it's all set up in my eyes. The debate on the various forums about what exactly happened in this game's ending was intense. People were so protective of their own theories. It was chaos. No pun intended. Man. All right, all right, all right. Let's see. So yeah, Xenosaga 1 has been conquered. Woot woot. This was a viewer request game by Fancy Waffles, actually, from YouTube. Um, and I forgot to mention that in the intro. I said it was Aeromio, but Aeromio boosted this game up with points. So, perhaps I gotta shout out Aeromio as well. For my first impressions, based off of day 1 and 2, I think this game might contain the highest cutscene to battle ratio I've ever seen. I feel like I've done less than 20 battles in the 2 days I've done so far. Battles feel like they're on the slow side, but I'm unsure if it's the game or because I haven't played a PlayStation 2 RPG in a while. The situation with the save points is a very tragic thing. If it occurs with any amount of frequency on the PlayStation 2 as it did for my playthrough, that's not good. Story is pretty dense, lots of characters, including playable characters, in such a short time. I do recognize the techniques they are using, though, which is pretty clever. Have us work with Shion and Cosmos alongside Realians, then swap over perspective to something Realian related. Um, and those are my first impressions. So for my overall thoughts, I wrote this last night, and I think I kind of still feel this way. I'm unsure what to think about the game. It's pretty all over the place with the story and falls into some of the common trappings for games of its era. Lots of exposition, very over the top, and many attempts at being grand in scale while also being obtuse. And I think that kind of encompasses my general feelings about this because there, like, there's both a lot going on in this game and there's also like nothing going on in this game, if that makes any sense. Um, we we learn so many things that I think it dilutes the impact and message that sometimes gets conveyed from other sequences of events. Like Momo being, the super important person that everyone is trying to get a hold of. Like that's an interesting plot point. But and it's been fairly consistent in that, people are going after Momo. But then there's this whole um we get trapped in like gnosis space. Then there's this whole Zohar key or fragments or emulator um, plot line. Then there's just the gnosis plot line in itself. Then there's the side plot line of Joachim Mizrahi and the council Mizrahi person. And then there's the United Federation plotline, and then there's the UTIC plotline, and then there's Udu, who's also out there. Then we got mysterious purple guy. Then we've got the Vector guy, and uh, uh, I'm probably forgetting like four or five more other people's. Like there's so much going on. Then there's this mystery with Cosmos of like Cosmos was built by this engineer a long time ago who died by Cosmos. Like what's going on with Cosmos. And there's Shion. Shion got touched by a Gnosis, and she's not dying like everybody else dies from being touched by Gnosis. And then Shion can see this little girl, Nephilim, who's involved with something. And then there's um, something about Shion is actually like tied to Cosmos or some other mysterious thing. Like Shion might have this super hidden power type of deal going on that we don't know about. And then there's Chaos, who spells his name with a lowercase c, who's definitely involved in a lot of things. And he seems to know more than he lets on, but we don't get to learn anything about him. Like there's so much going on in this game. It's out of control. Um, so I think my overall thoughts are like if I had to put myself somewhere, I think the game is okay. I think the gameplay has some really nice highs. Um, but the the story the story just it doesn't feel natural. Um, it it's a lot to chew through, and by the time that I play Xenosaga 2 and then Xenosaga 3, who knows what I'm gonna remember. Even if I play Xenosaga 2 on Monday, like how am I gonna remember all this stuff that they introduced in this game and they didn't resolve any of it? So like I have to remember everything to then get all the references for the next game. Um, it's crazy. It's crazy. So yeah, I I think I'm in the it's okay camp for now. I could potentially change my mind. I'm not like locked in on how I feel about it. I don't think it's a bad game. I don't think it's a great game. But I think there's an argument to be made that it can be a good game. Like it can be like it exhibits a lot of very cool things in this game, and there's a lot of unique things in this game that I don't think um, are present in any other RPGs that I have played around this release time. So like there's so many cool things, and it does new and interesting stuff, but also like if if you put any sort of value on the story, like I think you're gonna fall in one of two boats. The boat that I'm in, what the suckafu just happened, or the oh my gosh, I have to play the next game to find out, what's gonna happen next. And I think a lot of people will probably be in, that second boat. Um, for me, I think it is kind of important to have your game be um I don't want to necessarily say standalone, but like you should have a a traditional esque arc of a beginning, middle, and an end, where you you establish something. You go through all the mid game and the revelations and things like that, and then you reach the late game and you come to some sort of conclusion or finality, but there are still leftover things that can be addressed in future games. Um, and so, like, I kind of fear that because this is a 3 game trilogy type thing, that we just played like instead this is a 120-hour game and I just played the beginning, and episode 2 is going to be the middle where we start doing all the mid game stuff and learning more about even more about all the organizations and people and how they're all interacting, and maybe actually close a couple of threads while some new ones open up. And then on the third game, it's uh it's probably going to be either a insane plot dump, uh probably at the very end, b it's going to be like a massive uh like flood of information and things going on, or C, they're gonna they're gonna fail to close all the threads that they actually um wanted to do, because they started off with so much. So uh something's gonna happen. Looks like Xenosaga 2 is being added to the points. It might be all of Aeromeo's points. Um, I will admit that I don't have as much written down as I would like. Um, and that's primarily because like I was when I was starting to think about my thoughts on this game, it's like, oh, like they only just introduced this particular plot line, like, and they haven't done anything with it yet. So maybe I should wait until they do something with that plot line to then talk about it. And that just never happened. So, story was it satisfying? I'm gonna have to say no on this one. Um, again, as I've mentioned multiple times, there's no conclusion that I feel is relevant um, here, and so I just feel very wanting in in the story, in the sense of like I I wanted to I wanted to feel like I accomplished something, and I don't think I got that. Did it feel complete? I'm definitely gonna say no on that one. How was the pacing? I'm going to say the pacing was probably pretty good. There was that one time. Well, actually, it kind of depends on how into the weeds you want to go for the pacing. Because if we're just talking about like making sure that we're on the right track for the story, like you can kind of interpret that in a variety of ways when it comes to this game, because it's not so simple as, like, oh yeah, we weren't getting sidetracked by a bunch of things, because like everything was kind of a distraction, because of the way that things played out. um so it's kind of tough to talk about the pacing of this game, but I will say that going from moment to moment, like in the traditional way that I would describe it for other games, I think the pacing of this game was pretty good. There were moments that didn't seem to fit, like us going into what I'm going to call Gnosis space and coming across, I forget the planet name that like vanished or whatever, but there was a Zohar there. It's where we fought Cherenkov. Um, like that section felt awkward in the grand scheme of things, which I'll get to in a second. Um, the Kukai Foundation little arc thing was a little bit out of place. Uh, there might be like one or two more. Ariadne Cathedral ship. Uh, Cathedral ship. Oh yeah, yeah. That's what the place was called. Thank you. Um, so yeah, I think those two spots are the ones that I could think of off the top of my head where they probably didn't fit as well as they should have. There was also the memories thing for Shion and um, oh yeah, that was the other thing. Junior. There's something crazy going on with Junior as well that I know nothing about. I forgot to look up what a URTV is. That's another thing that this game does, by the way. They'll just say acronyms or say words, and then they won't explain it, and you have to go into the menus to learn what they meant. But I have a terrible memory, so I have to remember to go into the menu to do that, and I failed for the URTV. Um, yeah, yeah. They lost the plot. In other words, I, 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 I don't know if I want to say they lost the plot. I just think that they spread themselves very thin with all the things that they wanted to talk about and introduce. There's a lot of politics babble in this game that feels directly inspired by the politics babble that was in Star Wars Episode 1. You know, I could see the correlations there. Don't worry, you'll be too distracted by the many, many new things they introduce in Episode 2. I am afraid of that. I am. All right, thoughts on the story. Lots of exposition given by characters, which, funnily enough, doesn't actually clear up a lot of confusion or uncertainties. They can sometimes explain something uh, and completely gloss by something else. Yeah, so a lot of, I might even say the majority of dialogue in cutscenes. I probably want to dial it back down to a lot. Um, there's a lot of exposition in the cutscenes for these games. Um, Basically, almost any time it's not a cutscene with the main cast of characters, it's exposition. And then there are still some scenarios of exposition with the main cast of characters as well, but not to the same extent. And so it just creates this awkwardness of like anytime that someone else is talking that's not like the main protagonist group of six people, that that you're just going to get bombarded with a bunch of information that you have like not enough context for, and they don't explain the context in a way that's helpful, and like you also don't know what is important right now and what needs to be important later, and like what that importance ties back to things that have already happened, because they're just kind of like spewing out stuff. So it, it was kind of hard to follow along because of that. I have some questions regarding the utilization of Cherenkov. He gets a whole backstory arc, whole quasi spy villain arc, and just kind of dies in a really weird spot with little context or explanation. It makes his inclusion feel unnecessary, but maybe he'll come back to life later in the game. He did not come back to life later in the game. And yeah, um, we spent a long time with Cherenkov. And the close of his arc was he was a spy for Utic, and he was um I'm just gonna call it like he was like an undead or something like that. Not like an undead in the traditional sense, but like he died and then he was resurrected or something like that as like a different type of human. Um and then but he also has like this weird power that wasn't explained or touched upon, or like nobody even referenced it. And he was also touched by a gnosis, and then he becomes a gnosis, and then we see him in like this beach setting, and he's just like, yeah, I guess that's life. And then that's it. But like the entire I don't know, like 8, 12, 16 hours of this game were basically dedicated to Cherenkov, and it just didn't make any sense to dedicate any time to him because he didn't amount to anything. His his entire purpose could be construed as just connecting us with the UTIC organization, but the problem with that is Ziggurat 8 was our connection with the UTIC organization. He is utilized to infiltrate their base and rescue Momo, who in turn gets us to see who Utic is, and what they're after and all the other stuff, and that's how they get involved. So yeah, I don't know what they were going for with that character, other than like, here's a character that we've fleshed out and like have a backstory for, have some nice emotional scenes for, and like in for that type of like that execution, I think they did his character really well. It's just they kill him off pretty early, and it just doesn't mean anything, you know. So I guess they missed the landing on that one. I don't know. Uh, I think the story, I wrote this a couple of days ago. I think the story of this game makes sense, at least up to the point where Cosmos and Shion need to stop Udu. Where things start falling apart are the stuff that happens in between. Dr. Mizrahi did something on Milsha that caused problems, but the relevance is still murky for me. Did he summon the Gnosis there? Was he trying to do something with Udu? The Zohar have been very key in a large amount of sequences, but have actually amounted to nothing as of the Song of Nephilim. We know they are emulators, and the original is on Milsha, but what do they do? Why are they important? Why does the Gnosis want them? Why does anyone want them, including Utic? Who the Suckafu is Utic, by the way? The politics definitely don't do anything to benefit my understanding. There's power struggles and chess moves happening, but in a lot of cases, if not all of them, they're used as exposition. It's very strange. Yeah, I, I, I've kind of explained this in more detail before, but like, there's just a lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot of information out there, and it's all just kind of a lot to keep up with. Um, and I will also add that they don't do what I would necessarily attribute as um, like typical techniques of making sure that like when you're introduced to someone, you're then being reintroduced to that someone multiple times and like learning more about them as the game goes on. So like for Utic, for example, it's not like we were introduced to Utic and then we would encounter Utic operatives and stuff like that multiple times throughout the game, and kind of learn more about their organization and what they stand for and what they're trying to accomplish. It's just like, we know Utic is bad. They did something. And then we're playing a character who is trying to infiltrate a Utic base, which I don't think we know is Utic at the time. And we rescue Momo. And then, what's his name? Do I have his name over here? Albedo. Albedo shows up, and he's apparently their boss. And from there, it's like we don't know anything else about Utic. It kind of seems like Utic is working on their own things, and Albedo is maybe just like a contractor, that, or like he contracted Utic out. But I don't know. You can you can kind of interpret that in a bunch of ways. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. Um, let's see. I'm not sure where this game will end, but I think I would have liked the focus to be mostly on Momo and the information she has, or if the focus was on Cosmos and her integration with the world they live in. I feel like the game is pulling in so many directions with Utic, Udu, Albedo, the United Federation, Kukai Foundation. the science company Shion works for, which is Vector, and the Gnosis, alongside anyone else I'm forgetting. There's just so many major players and not enough time dedicated to understanding these organizations. Yeah, I think if they just stuck with the Gnosis for this game, um, that would have been pretty helpful. Uh, there was that whole Utic power struggle as well at the Kukai Foundation. Um, it's just a lot. It's just a lot. I can only repeat myself from this point forward. Uh, unless we go into gameplay mechanics and design. What gameplay elements stand out? Menuing in this game is very rough. I'm 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 kind of holding back on how the menuing in this game is. What I really want to say is the menuing in this game is probably some of the worst menuing that I've come across in a lot of games. Like if I had to rank the menuing of this game, it's very likely that it's at the bottom of the list or towards the bottom of the list. You know, like last five, last 10, last 25, whatever. Certain menus tell you information that is valuable in other menus, but that information is not accessible in those other menus. Selecting through menus is very tedious. Select tech points, then character, then what you want to do with those points, then visit another menu where you can use my points or assign abilities. Condensing these into individual characters would save a lot of time. Um, yeah, like I should just be able to click on a character and then a sub menu pops up and it's like, do you want to work with ether skills? Do you want to equip things? Do you want to um, work with tech skills? You want to spend your character points? I forget what they're called. And like you just click on that, you go into a new menu, and you can do everything in that menu all at once. You know what's also really annoying? In order to unequip something, you have to go to the unequip menu. Or like selection in the a sub menu of the main menu for characters for equipping things. And it's like, why can't I just click on the item and then a little sub menu pops up and it says, like unequip or something like that. Like there's so many more natural ways to approach the menuing in this game, but it's it's rough. It's really rough. The AGWS menu and the item names make you want to die. Yeah, I don't have anything about the item names, but the AGWS menu is also rough times. Um, you know what? I'm also going to add on here that it's not it's not very easy to know what is an upgrade and what isn't an upgrade for certain people because you don't actually get to see those stats go up unless you buy the item or exit out all of those menus and then open up your menu and go through all those menus to look at individual characters. Um, yeah, I I don't like the menuing of this game at all. Uh, I like the distribution of ether, tech, and skill points. It's cool that they all do different things to make characters more powerful. I wish party members didn't lose out on them though. Yeah. Um, I think it's very cool that they kind of split these out. You know, ignoring the whole menuing part. I think it's very cool that there are like 3 or 4 different types of points that you get in combat, and they all kind of affect different things. And um, like certain enemies maybe give more of those points than others. Some enemies just don't give any of those points. And so like it adds a nice like push pull to the reward system of a fight, and it makes it more engaging, I guess, for me, because it's not just I get experience, I level up, my stats go up. It's I get experience, I level up, my stats go up, and I get this other stuff on top of it that allow me to customize my character to, um, I guess I'll say, degree that I want to take them in, like a path that I want to take them on. And so I don't think I've ever come across a game that like allows you to approach customization in like this exact way or something close to it. Um, so I thought that was very cool. The downside to the system is that at any given time, I'll never know what characters are going to be in my party or who will stick around for the rest of the game. Makes it difficult to decide on who to invest in, and in hindsight, it's starting to seem like pouring all my points in the Shion may not have been terrible. Yeah. So, um, the the system of itself is pretty cool, but when your party composition is changing throughout the game and you never quite know who's going to be in your party at any given time, it's very difficult to then say, okay, um, this person is going to stay in my party and accumulate enough points for me to utilize them. Um, like I think chaos has been around most of the time. Uh, and I really want to say that like chaos I I think it's I think it's only chaos that's been around the most. I think Ziggy is probably second. Momo maybe second or third. But Momo gets removed from the party for however long because of stuff. Um, Also, Momo's a healer, which is rough times in of itself. Like, just imagine if you kicked out Shion from your party for the entire game, and you were using Ziggy, Chaos, and Cosmos or Momo, and then you get to the part where Momo gets booted out of the party. It's like, what do you do? You have no healer now, and Shion is uh has no points to spend on anything, so you don't have the benefit of having the multi heal and all that other crazy stuff. Um, yeah, so I think this to me is just one of those examples of there's a system that works pretty well, but it doesn't work very well in conjunction with some of the other decisions that are made about character progression and story um progression, I guess. There's moments where we're playing like two characters at a time, and like I was playing Shion and Chaos once, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing with Chaos, and Chaos was taking 100 damage. That was probably a difficulty spike moment. Um, but like, yeah, it's just one of those things where if backup party members got full experience and they also got all those points without even having to participate in battle, this would never have been an issue, and it's just been an entirely positive system. But you always got a cardinal sin it. You spoil some episode 1 Momo gameplay stuff that I missed. I don't plan on 100%ing or replaying the game. Yeah. Episode one is free game. Or it's I've beaten it, so there's it's not a spoiler for me. Let's see. There's a pretty large discrepancy with money that I think is an issue. It seems like Gnosis enemies don't drop money at all, including bosses, considering a lot of enemies are Gnosis in the game, and certain sections of the game are exclusively Gnosis. It felt like there was a stranglehold on earning money. I'm I'm actually the longer I've played this game, the more I think that only human enemies drop money, because there was a lot of um, mechanical enemies that I wasn't getting money from. I was getting drops that could be sold for money. Um, but yeah, there's 1000% a money problem in this game, in my opinion. And that all combined with the fact that once I couldn't invest 6,000 into the email things due to lack of money, I just felt super far behind in upgrades. Whereas prior uh, to that, my money felt pretty good. Yeah. Um, I also think that the pricings for items is can get pretty high as well, and like I had to sell some things that I wasn't necessarily interested in selling, um, just to make sure that I had the upgrades that I wanted and whatnot. So um, it definitely felt like, in addition to the difficulty spikes that I had reached, that my money problem also greatly contributed to the difficulty spikes that I was in, because like I couldn't explore the AGWS upgrades as much as I wanted to, and certain characters, lacked certain upgrades at the time. I couldn't buy more accessories to progress my skill level from 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3. Um, I I didn't have enough recovery items to do a lot of the things that I wanted to do. There was a lot of cascading effects that happened because I just didn't have enough money. And like, as far as I'm aware, there weren't really a lot of ways or enough ways to earn money. Um, Shop inventory seems to update pretty slowly. There was a large portion of the game where I only had the 50 hit point restore items available, with characters having 300 or more hit points. The same happened with the 300 restoratives. Yeah. There's also that where, like, I think you might have to do the email thing um to get like more items and stuff like that, but you can choose different things, and certain shops have different stock in them and whatnot, and it was kind of rough. It was kind of rough. If the whole save point if the whole save points don't work all the time thing actually does happen on disc copies, that is a massive issue, and I'm surprised to see this type of bug. It's pretty pretty large and makes me thankful I have a way to navigate around it. I can definitely say that if if I hooked up my PlayStation 2 and just put the disc in the game and I ran into that save issue the first time that I did, and I had to replay, what was it, like an hour and a half, 2 hours, I might have just said, I'm not going to deal with this. Um, because that's insane. Uh, I had to get pretty far in the game to reach a point where the save points from that point forward were actually uh whatchamacallit, like reliable. Save bugs are an emulator only thing. I saw a Reddit comment where somebody was alluding to the possibility that they are actually on the disc copies too. Take that with however many grains of salt you have for it. So there's items you can collect that, one, give her multiple Sailor Moon forms and transformation sequences with unique battle abilities, and two, she can get a mech. Oh, cool. Very, very cool. I didn't come across, I don't think, anything Sailor Moon related. Who is texting me? Okay. I haven't, somebody's, I don't know what that is. I'll look into it later. Crayson said he had bugs with cutscenes, apparently soft locked during one of them. Oh, I didn't have anything like that. That I know of. For combat, combat has some nice quirks to it. I like the different attacks and the ability to mix and match. I do think that 3 near attacks is probably too much for most characters and wished more far attacks were available. Alternatively, being able to set how many near and far attacks would work for me too. Yeah, can anybody let me know if there's a way so that you could have 2 near attacks and 2 far attacks? Or is it always just 3 near attacks and 1 far attack? Because there's characters like uh, Shion or Cosmos or I mean, basically only the characters that I was using. But like there was times where I would want to change up the distribution, and I couldn't really figure out a way if that was possible. Boosting is neat, but I think its acquisition can be slow. I will say that I started to master the boosting techniques towards the end there, but basically it relies on the little carousel thing to get the boosting turn. And if you have 3 attacks on that turn, then you can just get your boost back, which is pretty cool. Otherwise, you get maybe like 70 to 75% of the boost meter. But like overall, it's uh, you just have to utilize the turn thing. But if you don't utilize turn thing, it is pretty slow. Speaking of, the rotating battle bonuses are an interesting idea, but I think I could do without them. I do appreciate the design space they built with it, though, especially that boss that would do an attack if their turn landed on that bonus. So yeah, this is one of those weird things where it's like it's not necessarily random, but there's kind of a random element in the battle where certain turns have access to certain bonuses. And really, the kind of larger issue that I have with it is that 2 of those bonuses are worthless for either the entirety of the battle or until the final hit of the battle. And so there's just not a lot of range for the bonuses. For 1 turn, you get increased crit chance. Okay, that's nice. For another turn, you get increased ring boost, boost gauge boost, which, like that's pretty helpful. But I don't know. It's like if you remove those things, combat would just be mostly the same. I I really don't feel like the crit bonus was as impactful as maybe I would have wanted it to. Like maybe if it made it so that all attacks on that turn were crits, perhaps that would change my feelings on it. But yeah, like I I I guess it's just one of those things where it's a neat idea. Its implementation may not go as far as I would want it to or be as impactful as I want it to, but its inclusion was not a detriment to me. And um, perhaps if I caught on to its utilization a lot sooner than I did and took advantage of the times 2, 4, and 10 point things on bosses and things like that, I'd probably have a way easier time doing a lot of things that I wanted to do and maybe, getting more money and stuff like that. I certainly recognize that I could have taken advantage of the tools that were given to me to a greater deal. Let's see. AGWSs feel both cool to have but underwhelming as well. For a giant robot, much of its contributions don't amount to something significant over on foot characters. Then again, I probably fell behind in upgrades due to my money situation. You know, I kind of feel like maybe I didn't fall behind on the situation. Even, I did, but like there was that point where I upgraded Junior to max frame, max generator. Uh, he had some pretty good pistols, and he would attack and do 100 damage. And like that was after I spent a turn getting into the mech. And then on foot, he was doing like 150 to 250 with his attacks. And so it's just one of those things where it's like I put I put both turn time and then upgrades and money and like customization time into this AGWS, and it's not even better than him just chilling on foot. In fact, it's not just that it isn't better, it's like actively worse because he can't use boosts, he can't gain boosts. Uh he he can only attack once per turn, whereas on some turn sequences he can then attack 2 times, whereas on foot he can attack twice every turn, and every other turn he can attack 3 times, and he gains boost, and he can use boosts. It blows my mind that for my particular playthrough, um, towards like the second half of the game, AGWSs were like a detriment to be used. And this is also not excluding the fact that if you die in an AGWS, then like the pilot doesn't just hop out and you can, just not go into the AGWS again. It's like they die in the AGWS, and I don't think you can revive them, as far as I'm aware. So it's and you can't heal AGWSs in combat. You can't use the frame recovery items in combat. I I I got through some bosses in the early game because of the AGWS, and I recognize that they have a pretty good use. And like I'm sure you could probably build them to be excellent. But for me, I'm gonna say that they were pretty freaking valuable for the very early portions of the game and were beyond useless after that. Uh, Arguably um, a detriment. Definitely feels like a difficulty spike happened somewhere around the gargoyle fight and ramped itself up even more at the Song of Nephilim. Enemies have a ton of hit points and do hard hitting area damage or abuse the heck out of boosting. Holy cow! The boosting thing. there's I I need to know how that works for enemies because I remember one fight where I was up against three Realians, and like they had like a rocket launcher's sniper rifle or something like that. And one of them would get a turn, and then one of them would boost, and then the boosted one would take their turn, and the one that did their turn prior would then boost, and then they would take their turn, and then the one that just went the turn before because it was boosted would boost again and get another turn. And I'm just like, what the heck is going on? Like, can you just infinitely boost? It's insane. Absolutely insane. Let's see. I'd also love to understand how turn order happens because it's a complete mystery to me. Um, I think this is probably my least enjoyed aspect about the combat, excluding the AGWS debacle. Um, is like I like how they show the current turn and who's going where and whatnot, but I would like that to be extended out, maybe like two turns, so like you can see the next turn as well and plan for those things. I recognize that that would require a change potentially in how boosting works, but maybe not. Maybe it's just the current turn. That's all I have to worry about. But I would love for the turn order to be. Uh, there's a really fancy word. Uh, maybe like unobfuscated for more turns. I don't know. Um, let's see for dungeons. Keeping it a buck, there was a couple of annoying dungeons. Um, I like not annoying in the sense of the dungeons themselves were annoying, but annoying in the sense of like navigating through this dungeon wouldn't be so bad, except every fight has, 2 to 3 enemies that have 2,000 hit points and hit me for 250 damage. So, sometimes my entire party for 250 damage each. So uh, I think the the difficulty spikes were probably the larger contributor to that. For cardinal sins, backup party earns less experience. I believe I calculated that out to be 75%. Forcing the player to use certain party members. Uh, that in of itself, but also there is that fight where Shion and uh, where like Shion and Junior were confronting their memories, and if it is required to have Shion and Junior in your party for that fight, to the point where if you don't have one of them in your party at the time and you try to do that encounter and you just can't win it, that is an omega cardinal sin. Um, like like one of the highest degrees of cardinal sins that there could possibly be. Uh, but I don't know if that's like 100% confirmed. If if you don't have Junior in your party, like, is it possible to beat that boss with just Shion? That's something for the Twitch chat / YouTube comments. Let me know. But whenever I get around to doing an encounter report for this, I have a feeling that everybody's going to use Junior, but maybe I'll fish for somebody who's not using Junior just to get clarification on that. And then the last one, removing a key party member without sufficient replacement. Cosmos is removed a bunch of times. Momo is removed. Uh, you know, everybody gets removed at some point. I think that's all of them. I got to give this game props for not having a silent protagonist. Thank you very much for that. Uh, were there any side quests in this game? I don't think I came across a single side quest. And that's very interesting. For miscellaneous sound and music, as has been pointed out by Mr. JRPG, there's definitely a lack of music in a lot of places. It's odd. Yeah. It's not like, ooh, we're doing like atmospheric music. It's just like there's just nothing going on. I wouldn't say it's always just silence, but like it's effectively silence. And it's a very strange decision. Battle theme is nice though. I do like the battle theme. There's you know it's gonna be one of the first tracks that I try to uh, make a beat out of for sure. For the voice acting, I think the voice acting, I I do recognize that it's kind of a product of its time. Um, and so, it does have that early, like, I didn't give the right inflection for this particular type of emotional moment type deal. Um, but I think overall, Shion did really, really well. I think Junior did pretty solid. Um, I generally have a negative outlook to robot or robotic characters that then recite their lines robotic because like even though that's what you were going for, it sounds robotic. So like you can't get over the it sounds robotic part because sounding robotic is in of itself is just not very interesting. And so you're kind of just setting your character back by having them sound robotic because you know that's their thing. For graphics, I liked the graphics. I also liked how they approached some of the cutscenes in this game. Where like some of them were like pre-rendered cutscenes or kind of close to it, and other ones were like in-game cutscenes. They had a variety of how they approached uh, the cutscenes and whatnot, and it was very cool. Um, I I do have to point out though that, and I feel like I shouldn't point this out because like usually I just let it go, but there's this game has a fascination with certain camera shots on certain characters where you should never get those camera shots ever. And I recognize that this game was made in Japan and that it's kind of a thing in Japan. But I'd rather not see those shots. And it's usually like they start there and then they pan somewhere else, and it's very unnecessary. It actually detracts from the game for me. But if you know, you know. For other, it's not a sequel. Is the game worth recommending? This is a rough one. So like at this point in time, I have just beaten Xenoblade. Or is it Xenoblade? I've just beaten Xenosaga 1. I know there are two games after that, but if I'm taking my experience right now, not knowing if the other two games are good or excellent or just not. I I can't see myself recommending Xenosaga 1 at this juncture under any circumstances. Um, I think there's a cool battle system, and uh, and there's a lot of really cool elements tied to the battle system. But I think I think a lot of people out there play games for the story, and so and like gameplay is secondary or tertiary or wherever it is. You know, it's not necessarily number one. And so I don't think a lot of people that I know of that play games for the story will go into this game feeling satisfied with what they got. And if they encounter some of the uh, uh, roadblocks that I've encountered, then that is only going to detract from an already, you know, questionable experience that they've already experienced with the story. So, like, I, it, it, this is, you know how there's TV shows out there where it's like, yeah, if you watch the first season and stop, you know, it's gonna be terrible. But wait until you watch, like, if you can just make it until the middle of season two, then it's gonna be absolutely amazing. This could be one of those circumstances where you have to get through the slog to eventually reach, you know, the super gratifying moments. And you know, just like out of principle, this is just one of those things where it's like, I don't think I can recommend this game of that. Um, this kind of reminds me, tangent. This reminds me of I on Reddit I see a lot of posts that you know I kind of suspect are AI, but you know maybe they're not. Where like they'll pose a question to people, and I've had this interest of asking a question like that of what's a TV show where there's like an arc or an episode that completely justifies watching the entirety of um, that show just to get to that point and experience that point. And for me, Star Trek Voyager and the whole species 8472 6472, I forget exactly what it is. But that arc is some peak television. But you know, a lot of people don't like Star Trek Voyager, and a lot of the stuff that happens prior to that, you know, is you know you might like it, you might not. But I think everybody will like the species 6472 arc. And so, you know, maybe we'll get that out of Xenosaga. Who knows? If the developer is watching, um, I I think this is I don't like where I'm going with this. Uh, I think this game shows a lot of ambition, but the problem with that is I, I I'm like 99.9% sure. I believe I checked this that this game comes out after uh, Xeno Xenogears, and Xenogears has a lot of problems with ambition. And so I I'm kind of seeing a scenario where ambition has taken over two games in the Xeno series and has negatively impacted those games to a fairly large degree. So it it it's starting to create a pattern, and it does make me concerned that the ambition will not subside in episode two, and maybe not even episode three. So I know those games are already out, but if I had any advice, it would just be like tone it down, rein it in, and just focus on some specific elements. Uh, uh, 1 to 3 specific elements, and flesh those out, as much as you can, with focus on those elements, and maybe if you want to tie them together, that would also be pretty nice, and try to get a cohesive narrative uh, going, because that way it's something that can be we can follow along, and even if you don't end any of those narratives in that individual game, like there's there's less that we have to remember, especially like obscure stuff and like one-liners and whatnot. It'll probably allow you to avoid a lot of exposition, maybe, and obviously easier said than done. But that would just be like the criticism turned into advice from somebody who knows nothing of the challenges that you've gone through, uh, uh, and all other crazy stuff. I know game development is crazy, um, so there's a lot of things that could happen, and I am Jon Snow in this situation. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Xenosaga One. To reiterate, I I'm I'm kind of in this nebulous spot of I don't exactly know how I feel about this game, because the game is entirely without conclusion. It's it's like watching a 3 hour movie and you get the to be continued at the end of the first hour. So it's just really really strange. I don't know if I've necessarily come across a game that has set up so much in it and concluded none of that before. So that in of itself creates a very unique experience for me. Um, but if I had to like assign something now, I think as of this nanosecond, I think it's okay. Um, maybe future me will be able to decipher things and see things that I wasn't able to come across or whatever just by playing this for 4 hours a day. But yeah, that's my overall thoughts. Let me catch up on some chat stuff. Xenosaga 1 is one of the only dual layer DVDs ever released for the PlayStation 2. The dual layer tech was new back then, and it was burning out the PlayStation 2's cheap lenses. So from that point on, games companies stopped publishing dual layered games. They went dual layer for Xenosaga 1 to store all of the pre rendered cutscene videos, so it would be very hard to remaster the game. Most of the cutscenes are videos, not actually rendered by the PlayStation 2. Oh. Feels like all the budget went to the cutscenes. and voice acting, so music budget took a hit. Maybe it's dark sided that that there was one battle theme for the entire game, including all bosses except for the last one. Yeah, I didn't even touch on that myself. It was it's one of those things where like I enjoyed the battle theme so much that I maybe subconsciously recognized that it was the same battle theme for the entire game, but like externally, I don't think I actually realized that. um, I think I might have mentioned it once at some point, but like it was just one of those scenarios where I don't know, like it just never popped out of my mind. Like, oh, this is the same battle theme that was the same battle theme that was the same battle theme. I don't know. I liked the battle theme. There were there were nice elements in the battle theme that um that I gravitate to, and so every time I heard them, I liked it. But I listen to rap music, and you know, you're listening to a 5 minute rap song. It's kind of the same pattern over and over again. So yeah. Grayson also criticized the voice acting, but you, as someone who usually hates English voice acting, actually thought it was fine. Really? That's a surprise, Manadran. Tetsuya Takahashi, the director, is a pervert, and if you can believe it, it gets so much worse in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I've played Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I know what you're referencing. Out of body experience. Instead of casting out 10 nets per episode and wrapping up 5 of them and leaving 5 for the next episode, they've cast out 30 nets out from the start and wrapped up nothing. Yeah, yeah, that's kind of what it is. That's kind of what it is. Maybe even more than 30 nets. But let me let's see. Oh, oh, I didn't mention this, but I'm gonna mention this. I don't like that the circle button is the confirmation button for everything, and the X button is the back button or the exit button for everything. Um, I understand that games do not have to conform to normal uh the normalities that other games have done. There are certainly circumstances where you're going to want to use the circle button or whatever you want it to use it for, and the X button for whatever you wanted to use it for. But when I have years of experience and years of experience utilizing buttons in a certain way, and I have to then train myself that whenever I want to confirm my selection, I have to instead uh, use the opposite button that I would under normal circumstances. That's a huge learning curve for me. So I wish it wasn't that way. It is normal in Japanese versions of games. That's sometimes the same in English. Okay, I see. I didn't know that. Hmm. I'm just throwing it out there. I, I somebody had to say it. That's all. Alrighty, that's uh that's Xenosaga 1. Uh, I don't think I have anything else. So I guess I'm gonna end my thoughts here.